How you doing? My name's Peter Birch. This is Talking HealthTech Lunchtime live stream. So each week we go live across LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook and talk about everything that's been happening in the week of technology and healthcare, digital health, everything in between. And also we're bringing on a guest to these sessions now too. I'm going to bring on Aidan firstly. Aidan, our community manager. Hey, buddy, how you going? Oh, I can't hear you anymore. I'll unmute you. There you go. Hang on. You need to unmute yourself. I can't unmute you.
Isn't that just a rookie error these days?
Rookie
After
mistake,
18 months,
yeah.
you'd think we'd be able to work this kind of basic tech out. Hey.
Yeah, I think so. Well, looking very sharp, buddy. It's because it's a fun session we've got. Normally, we've been trialing these lunchtime live streams for the past couple of weeks. Aidan and I have been chatting about what's been happening in our own community, but also broadly in the industry for the past couple of weeks. Had some pretty good engagement on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. By the way, if you're watching live on any of those, drop a comment, let us know that you are watching, and we can see that on this side, and that'll shape some of the conversation. But with us today, I'm going to bring on our guest, and it is none other than Bronwyn Le Grice. Hey, Bronwyn, how you doing?
I'm trying to tweet while I talk to you.
That's the way. It's we've thrown Bronwyn in the deep end of being the debut guest of these lunchtime live streams. So
you didn't tell me I was first.
Yeah, well, the first guest on the live, because we've been doing them as a bit of fun on the side and see how they go.
That's why I'm so dressed up today. I don't walk around like this all the time.
I thought maybe you went for a job interview or something. And then, but no, look, that's great. Drop us a message in your social platform of choice if you're watching live. Also, plenty of people watch these afterwards as well, watch the recording too. So really, we'll break it up in a few sessions. And really, we'll take the opportunity, firstly, having a guest with Bronwyn, get to learn a bit more about what you're up to and some of the exciting things coming up. It's been a while since we caught up, actually, Bronwyn. I think last time in the Talking HealthTech world was back at the Autumn Summit. So there's been a lot that's happened between now and then. What's been keeping you busy since then?
Well, COVID time, Pete, time during COVID just seems it's a very elastic concept in this day of lockdowns. But we've had a massive year this year, so really exciting. So we're awarded $19.75 million by the Medical Research Future Fund, and we've got another several million committed from industry partners to relaunch and expand our ANDHealth Plus pilot program, which has long been a program where we've firmly believed that it's very unique, but also the outcomes it's delivered for the first 10 companies who went through a much smaller pilot version of what we're doing now. Those companies have raised over $90 million and impacted over 200,000 patients in less than 4 years. So we know that this is a high impact program. So securing that funding is really exciting as a founder, because, we have an innovation-based audience, but as a founder, it's also the first time in ANDHealth history that we've had really kind of that 4-year horizon on what we're doing since we first started. So it's nice to not be in that kind of what are we going to be doing next year to survive mode, and just be able to focus on delivering really high quality programs.
It's great that we can see those outcomes in an area that is so needed. For so long in the past couple of years, we talk about one of the biggest problems is access to funding and having a structure in order to be able to do that. So it sounds like we're really addressing a much needed area within the industry. So that's great.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, right? So we started talking about this digital health concept and evidence-based digital health and moving into digital medicine and digital therapeutics, 4 or 5 years ago. And I think the allocation of a stream within the early stage translation and commercialization program by the MRF to digital health in itself was a really big step forward. We've never had a dedicated funding initiative for digital health commercialization as a standalone program funded by the MRFF ever before. So for me, that shows, I think it in some ways reflects the impact that COVID has had on the way we think about healthcare, and we think about shifting clinic from care from the clinic to the home or to wherever people might be. So just that shift in thinking that, hey, this is actually medical research and it deserves MRFF funding, that in itself was a big move. And I think for me, even if we didn't get funded, I think I was happy to just see the funding made available. You know, it's been something we've been crusading for a long time. So, of course, delighted that we were successful in winning that grant. But, you know, hopefully it's just the beginning of building a new sector that will change the lives and livelihoods of Australians, but also will drive exports and new globally scalable businesses that are based here in Australia, but are delivering healthcare around the world.
Perfect. And look, just a reminder for anyone that's just joined live on one of your social media platforms, we're doing a live stream conversation with Bronwyn Le Grice from ANDHealth on this Talking HealthTech Lunchtime Live. Drop a message in the chat if you've got any questions, wanted to shape the conversation. But Bronwyn, I'm really interested to learn a bit more about ANDHealth Plus, because I've seen a bit of that online, and keen to learn a bit more about what it is. And no doubt there's plenty of founders and members within the Talking HealthTech community that want to know a bit more too. So tell us a bit more about it.
So ANDHealth Plus was the flagship program that we were running when we launched ANDHealth itself. So it kind of was our reason for existing. And so it's really quite a different type of program. So it's not a grant program. So that's the first thing that everyone goes, right, well, I can just write an application to Bron and the team and say, I want $1 million and I'm going to justify it and they're going to give me a check. We don't work like that. What we do is we bring a whole multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary wrapping, if you like, around the selected SMEs. So you get an industry advisory panel, and then that panel works with you to identify the highest impact per dollar spend activities that we can undertake with you to accelerate your commercialisation pathway. So it's a two-stage program, which is novel. So the first stage is very much what we ran in our pilot program with a little bit more money. So that was a 6-month project where we really looked at de-risking the offering. So what would an enterprise customer or an institutional investor think when they saw your pitch? Where are the red flags for them, and can we make the red flags go away? Right? So it's all about removing those perceived risks in your pathway. And so that stage one is that, and then we do our enterprise customer and investor deal flow days, but then we take all of their feedback and go, right, so now what's a big milestone that we can now invest in following all that feedback and all that de-risking? What's the game-changing piece of work we can do? And it might be multiple pieces of work. And then we can look at investing in those. So there's 3.75 million in total for both stages across each intake. So there's 5 companies. Aim is 5 companies per intake, might go up to 7 if it's a groundbreaking year. So those 5 companies share in that 3.75 across 2 stages. So it's an 18-month program. Industry advisory panel, we have an international investment committee, which is yet to be announced. So sorry, Pete, can't do that one now. But I can say we have over 95 applications for ANDHealth Plus in process. And the ANDHealth Plus program team have booked and are in the process of just finishing off over 100 one-to-one calls with applicants to help them assess whether they're eligible and to work through the application process with them. So we're expecting 80 to 100 full applications, and I thank those that are applying. It's a very comprehensive application process. And so that's more than double what we got for pilot program, which is kind of probably where I thought it would be. I think we've got to spend the next 10 days going through those applications. Everyone's bracing themselves for thousands of pages of review. So it's been really popular, but I also think that we're pretty open in saying we're not for everyone. It's a program for proof of concept companies who are working digital health as it's defined by the MRFF. And the MRFF has a definition of digital health that they feel fits within the definition of medical research in the Act, which established the MRFF, so that's fair enough. So it is very much focused on the digital medicine and digital therapeutics end of the spectrum. So patient-focused technologies that require clinical evidence, they're possibly and often likely going to be regulated in major markets. And so we're looking at those technology, those pieces of software, connected devices, with or without physical products that drive a clinical outcome in preventing, diagnosing, treating, mitigating, managing disease. So it doesn't really go into some of the really critical infrastructure pieces, but they're very well, I believe they're very well looked after by ANDHealth and also the Digital Health CRC, but really focusing on that intervention space, which is kind of fascinating, and certainly the area where we're also doing some work around software as a medical device regulation. So it's a really nice piece of it's a really nice program. It's open to SMEs, so you have to be under 200 staff. So for all of you 1,000 staff strong, multi-million-dollar gangbuster unicorns, probably not for you. But yeah, so it's an SME-focused program. So you need to be spun out or spinning out and be able to attest that you'll be an entity that fits the eligibility criteria. And you need to fit that definition that the MRFF has set. And then in terms of selection criteria, we look at, I'd love to say it's really, but at a high level, it's pretty standard. So clinical validity, market validity, the activities you propose to undertake, whether or not you've got access to the IP, who the team is, those kinds of things. So it kind of looks similar to most programs, but I think when you get under the hood, it's a little bit different. So it's all about bringing industry around the SMEs, and it's a really diverse set of industry. So it includes pharma, medical device companies, health analytics companies. We've got some new members in the pipeline. So it's about bringing those executives and those proven C-suite capabilities around these SMEs who probably wouldn't have access to that kind of diverse group of active professionals in a normal situation.
Yeah.
So what's involved in the process for applying, Bronwyn?
So we use a platform called Gust, which is quite commonly used by a lot of the global accelerators. And you can go to Gust, just create a profile, and you go through quite a long, complicated, word-limited form. But then there's a few uploads which are custom to us. So that form is, in effect, our investment selection criteria form. It's how we assess people, and we try to provide a lot of guidance in the form. It is long. And then we have a kind of proprietary version of the lean canvas and a pitch deck. And also a letter that says that your board or your advisory board are in support of you applying. So a lot of the advice that companies get will need, board buy-in to kind of really embrace. So we really like to see that where management teams have a board, that the board is also on side with the program. And I do have a small announcement, which for the 95 companies in process of lodging their applications, they were due close of play on Friday, giving everybody an extension till midday on Monday. So for those of you who are still thinking of applying and you haven't gotten going yet, you've got the weekend, but midday Eastern Daylight Saving Time, we will be closing the Gust application form. So you've got until midday Monday. So a 3-day extension for those of you that like working weekends to get your applications in. And, we've all set aside next week to do nothing but read applications. So we're pretty excited because just even kind of poking around the back end, there's some really interesting stuff coming through.
So for the people sitting on the fence at the moment, thinking about whether or not they should be applying, what's the time commitment to the program ongoing if they are eventually successful?
Yeah, that's a really amazing question, Aidan. So because we're a SME support program, there's two sides to the answer to that question. So the first side is it's quite time intensive in that you're expected to spend time and provide information and engage with fortnightly industry advisory panel meetings in the first stage, and maybe moving to monthly in the second stage, depending on your requirements. But also the flip side of that is we take a lot of the heavy lifting of some of the project off you. So we want the management teams of these SMEs to be really focusing on running their business. So when we're looking at doing large pieces of work with third-party suppliers, they actually are supported by an ANDHealth project team who will do all the procurement sourcing. So we've got a whole database of pre-vetted suppliers. We help you, we write and support you in agreeing a scope of work and making sure everyone's considerations are involved. We run an open procurement process on all the work, so it's always competitive. We help with contracting the suppliers. We help with managing the suppliers. We ensure they stay to scope. We ensure they stay to deadline. We ensure they stay to budget. So a lot of that kind of really administrative stuff around doing some of these big projects, ANDHealth actually takes that administration function off you. So you can focus on just providing your input into the actual business critical parts of it, not in the management of suppliers part of it. So although it's a time intensive program, you're also kind of getting a dedicated team that does the heavy lifting for you and helps you identify suppliers that you might not be able to access through your network. So that's it's a very different approach by doing that, but we really want to support the companies to achieve their milestones. So remembering we don't take equity, right? So everyone's quite obsessed with equity as having skin in the game, but there can be some counterintuitive pressures on accelerators when they take equity. One is they often don't want to give you negative feedback because they don't want to downgrade the value of the asset on their own balance sheet. So they're incentivized to spruik you to everyone, but that might not mean you're getting the best advice for you in the long term. So the only way we are measured is our impact metrics. How many patients you impact, how many commercial sites you move into, how many clinical trials you undertake, how many jobs you create, the revenue you generate, the capital you raise. That's how I measure myself. So I want to give you guys, as the leader of ANDHealth and the team, we're all committed to giving you guys the best advice that gets you the best outcome and is the most efficient possible use of capital.
So if you're not taking equity, what are you getting out of this? You seem like you're going around being really nice and supportive to everyone in the industry.
And many people are going, and that's not like Bronwyn at all. And then the other answer is world peace. Look, I set up ANDHealth and Grace joined shortly thereafter, and we've now got a team of, I think, 10. We're here to build an industry that becomes an export leader for Australia. I think our business sustainability approach initially has always been, we're here to grow the industry and to prove that we can commercialise these companies from Australia. I think we don't take equity, so we're non-profit. So our purpose is to accelerate commercialisation technologies in Australia. So even if we did take equity, our company structure precludes us from paying any dividends or distributions anyway. So it's really a kind of social impact play. Not to say that our own business won't evolve over time, because we all still want to be doing this in 5 to 10 years. And I personally, as a taxpayer, don't believe in people being completely dependent on taxpayer money in perpetuity. I think that's not great for anyone. But, you know, when we started this, people said to me, there's not enough companies to justify an ANDHealth. There's not enough pipeline. There's not enough market opportunity. There's not, these companies can just go through medtech or tech accelerators. They don't need an ANDHealth. So, you know, I think we're at the point where we go, right, well, okay, everyone now accepts we've added some value and we've got a role to play. And then we need to think as a CEO and board how we then go on and build that into us being around for the long term for the growth of this industry. But the industry is evolving so quickly. So we've gone from having about 120 companies in our database in 2018 to having 465 companies that have all been verified by the team in the last 3 months. And we have data across their clinical indications, primary, secondary, tertiary, their end user setting, technology stack, proposed paying customers. We have this immense data set, but many of those companies just didn't exist 5 years ago. So most of them were formed in the last 5 years. So I think it's a rapidly evolving sector, and we will have to evolve and be agile at capturing market opportunities as that sector evolves, so that we can ensure ANDHealth is here for the long haul. But I think there's always going to be a social impact and industry growth element to how we approach this, right? So even if you build a for-profit enterprise, it's in your best interest to grow your industry and to do stuff for the, you know, rising tides float all boats. We're an industry partner of Digital Health CRC. We're participating in the ADHA National Digital Health Strategy. We work with a whole variety of stakeholders across Australia in giving input into policy and advocacy and all of those things, because a rising tide floats all boats. The more we all work together, the greater the industry will be for Australia.
Got it. You mentioned some of those. You mentioned some of those companies that have come out since ANDHealth started.
Yep.
I assume quite a few have gone through the ANDHealth Plus program before. This is not the first time that the ANDHealth Plus program has run. Are there some familiar names that some people might know that they didn't know was associated with ANDHealth?
Absolutely. So we ran 10 companies through the pilot. So those companies are welcome to reapply in the new program, because it'd be very unfair to say the poor guys that signed up for a program that nobody had ever heard of can never apply for the funded program. But some of them, I'm pretty sure, will be too big to apply, which is a great sign of success. So alumni include Tier Medical, so epilepsy diagnosis in the home, fantastic company based here in Melbourne. Perks Health, which is a medication management and adherence company based in Sydney. Cancer Aid, IU Flow, I'm going to forget someone, which is always offensive to somebody. Dose Me, who exited to Tabula Rasa. Health Delivered, Vitalik Medical, and I am forgetting some, SkinView and Allergy Pal, and there's some more. And I apologise to all my cohort companies that I've forgotten, because it's a terrible thing to do. But I didn't have a list in front of me, so I'm not cheating.
That's
but,
a really good
amazing.
memory, though.
Oh, gosh, I know I've forgotten something. It's going to be somewhat really obvious. But just amazing companies, amazing founders, really diverse founders. So some of our founders are clinicians. Others are like ex-private equity and consulting guys and tech guys. And we have research-driven. Atmo Biosciences just closed $9.6 million. There you go. It's another one. These are, and Atmo's an ingestible capsule, and Perks is gamification of adherence. Like, we're talking quite a broad spread of the digital health kind of ecosystem. So really amazing companies, really amazing founders, and they've largely gone on to do big and great things. And I think beyond ANDHealth Plus, we've also got our masterclass. So that's had about 140 companies through it now. So many of people have done that. We're about to announce some outcomes just from this year's masterclass cohort as well, which was another 40 participants. And again, they've impacted over 200,000 patients. So I think the delight about digital health for me is the scalability and patient impact. You can work on a drug development technology for 10 years and never actually see it on a shelf. This is cool, right? Like, you can actually go, oh, look, we're changing lives. And it's, if anything gets the ANDHealth team out of bed in the morning, I'd say it's probably that.
Love it. I just saw in the chat, somebody asked if they're not eligible for, I guess, the ANDHealth Plus program, what else can they do? It sounds like the masterclass was one option.
So we have a number of programs that are funded through the READY initiative with MTP Connect. So that's our Bright early, and our programs run from idea to exit. So our Bright, Ideate and Innovate programs and our masterclass. But if you're a larger corporate and you want to get involved on the other side, so being involved in the selection and nurturing of our cohort companies, drop me a line, or Damien, our Chief Operating Officer, a line. We are looking and talking to potential new members at the moment. But also just reach out, because we're quite flexible. So we've done custom programs for people, and we're pretty collaborative. So if you guys want to work with us, reach out, have a conversation. Maybe don't reach out in the next week, because there's over 1,000 pages of applications on people's desks, and everyone's looking longingly at their coffee machines, and maybe in the afternoons their gin collection. But I really think we just like working with people, and if there's not a program in place, let's design one, right? Yeah. Let's do stuff.
Love it.
Yeah, because a lot of different companies are different, aren't they? So everyone's approach might be slightly different in the long run.
Sure. And companies in like the electronic medical record space and stuff that are not eligible for the ANDHealth Plus program, we're still keen to work with them. We have office hour sessions that aren't running at the moment because of the ANDHealth Plus program, but we'll restart. Always available for a 45-minute one-on-one catch-up with any digital health company. Always happy to talk about policy, running programs for the TGA if you've got questions about regulation. If there's anything else you want to see us doing too, maybe just drop us a note.
Love it. And just starting to round things out then, Bronwyn, thinking, your focus is definitely going to be the ANDHealth Plus side of things for the next couple of weeks, and then ongoing as well. But what else is exciting you? What are you looking forward to out of ANDHealth Plus and more broadly in the industry?
So we're running another virtual delegation to the health conference in a couple of weeks, I think, couple of weeks. So health is the leading digital health connected health conference in the US. We used to go physically. We've been going virtually as a virtual delegation last year and this year. We've got some great support. We run quite a big, in order to add value to the virtual delegation, we do quite a bit of kind of enhancement work. So we have professional journalists sitting up through the night covering the sessions and giving everybody in the Slack channel who's registered in case you missed it. We have, we try and get the odd guest person into Slack to say hi and doing stuff like that. I'm really looking forward to, we've got our summer summit. So the biggest thing for us could be our summer summit, and I'll make sure it doesn't clash with yours, Pete. But also, the big thing about that is we're really hoping that we'll be announcing our first 5 intake into the new ANDHealth Plus. So that takes us through to kind of mid-December. And then I'm actually looking forward to potentially getting on a plane and seeing some of our big stakeholders before Christmas and just seeing some people face to face and, having some of those less formal conversations that just to gear up for next year. Next year, I'm looking forward to seeing digital and connected health playing a big role in our return to normality. So many of you know I'm on the board of Lumos Diagnostics, so seeing point of care diagnostics in the home for COVID, so we can get back to doing things like many friends who've had to cancel their weddings 4 or 5 times now, and we'd really like to see a bit of normality returning. Pete, we've both got young kids, like to see a bit of I'd like my 21-month-old to not think Zoom calls are socialization because it's getting disturbing. But yeah, and then just looking to see what ANDHealth can do next year, right? So we've set ourselves a pretty high bar this year. So I'm looking forward to some big announcements next year.
Love it. Well, it sounds like your summer summit is on this side of the year, and ours will be in February, like at the end of summer. So we'll make sure there's plenty of time when we can attend both. So that sounds amazing. Look,
it's usually in winter, but we pushed it out because of the ANDHealth Plus program. So it's actually changing times. But we'll work with you, Pete, because collaboration is key, right?
Oh, that's right. Nice one. That's perfect. Now, look, that's probably a pretty good segue. What we normally do at these live streams, Bronwyn, stick around because we normally review what's been happening in the community, and that also opportunity to look at what's happening in the industry more broadly. And that's a chance for anyone in the chat too to drop any other questions. We can come back to anything ANDHealth specific too. So we might do that for the next 10, 15 minutes. And then by all means, if you're in the chat on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or on YouTube, drop us a message, let us know that you're there, and let us know what you want to talk about. Because there's been a bit that's happened, in the industry, let's say. It depends on where you're watching. But, so each week, let me just share my screen. Hang on. Because we've got a couple of things going on. There we go. Share. Cool. Oh, there's you. So we've got the newsletter that went out today, and that usually is a quick way to round things out. Simon in the community was announced our member of the month over at Lantern Pay, I think because he took a picture of his Talking HealthTech socks and posted it on Twitter. So thank you, Simon, for that. You get your lovely badge there. We're doing a masterclass series on IP and patents and everything in collaboration with the team over at Nutromix. There's we did a session on Monday within the community, particularly about trademarks, just about what they are and why they're important. And so the recording of that is available for those in the community, for those to check out. And we've got 3 other sessions that people can attend live if you wanted to register for those, or focused on this concepts around branding, trademarks, IP, all really important things that give you a high level to be able to then work out where you need to focus on. We had a few of our company members post some news on the Talking HealthTech website, InterSystems talking about the work they're doing, I think in the US, with just some research that's been released in conjunction with Greater Houston Health Connect, and of course Health Engine making their announcements of partnering with the Chemist2U group. Always interesting seeing these partnerships of different providers again coming together to be able to solve some of these problems, particularly in relation to the logistics side and getting scripts out to patients. One thing that wasn't posted on our website, but obviously was a big announcement this week, was the acquisition of Genie. So Citadel acquiring Genie. We dropped that in the Talking HealthTech community. Actually, we'll jump onto that in a second. And Aidan can take us through some of those other things that we've been chatting about in the community. But that Genie, recent sponsors of the Spring Summit that we just had, and I think you can check out a podcast episode from that session coming up soon on the Talking HealthTech podcast. So listen to that. So some exciting times ahead for the team over at Genie. Interesting. They were, it was pegged to be IPO and then has gone to be an acquisition through Citadel. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We've got a glossary of health tech terminologies. I remember early on in the day, Bron, when you were talking about, definitions and, we don't want to get into the process of defining too much, but we ended up having so many different terminologies on the podcast that we started putting this glossary of maybe 20 terms. Now we've got like 300 terminologies in the glossary, so it keeps getting.
I'm a definition Nazi, so I never write my own.
Yeah.
So I believe in definitions. I think everyone should have definitions, but I as somebody who spent a long part of their career doing due diligence, I always use independent, reputable third-party references. So I reference everything rather than writing stuff. Good so going back to digital health when we started, we just thought, here's the FDA's definition.
Yes.
Right, because it's a relevant definition. It's a major market from an investor driver perspective, and we look to outsource it. So it's the same thing. We look for third party. I love glossaries of terms, by the way. We've been asked to do one too. I might borrow yours. But I never write my own because I just think when we started ANDHealth, you'll love this. People are like, but what's your definition of digital health? It was like the first opening question. And the easiest way of shutting down that question is I don't have one. But the FDA does. We use that one.
Yeah. No, what's interesting is that what we're kind of phase 2 for the glossary that we're planning, because we have all these really interesting guests come on the show. When we had episode 100, 179, 180 we're up to now in terms of on the podcast, all these different themes and concepts get discussed, and there's different perspectives that get thrown around too. So we're starting to pull all those together and not necessarily define the concepts, but speak about the different kind of bits at play, and definitely referring back to those kind of key definitions and what they are for people to delve into in more detail afterwards. So that's great. If you are, make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you've not already. This week on it, we had an interview with Avi from ANDHealth and of course Dr. Magdalena Simonis, who is a big focus in that episode on elevating the position of women in healthcare and technology. Lots of work that she's doing in that space with the Australian Federation of Medical Women. So check out those episodes if you're keen to learn more. And I mentioned the episode that we did from the summit as well was in there too. But just to flick over to the community as well, Aidan, there's been lots happening. Aidan, our community manager, we've got a community of 180 something members in there now in our forum. Lots of animated GIFs of things going on, but what's been happening this week in the community?
There's been a huge amount of stuff going on. As we just touched on recently, Genie Solutions was acquired and cancelled their IPO deal. So that's a really good one to ask Bronwyn about with her background. What do you think about that, Bronwyn?
I think it's kind of interesting seeing private equity move into the space myself. I mean, I think when you start to see private equity firms taking a play, taking a position in a sector like this is a really indicative sign of where the global market's going in terms of size, scale, and opportunity. So, I mean, I like seeing private equity move into a space. I think it's a great sign. It's also, it's still a reference deal if somebody else is IPOing in the space. So you still get that kind of valuation transfer. But just I'm quite. And I'm also keen, I quite like seeing companies say, actually, no, we're not going to list and we're going to take some private equity and do it that way. I mean, not saying it's any easier to work with private equity than it is to be listed though, right? So all large investment deals have their pros and cons. But interesting to see the opportunity stay off market, noting that the private equity owners may choose to list it in the future anyway. So, it's not that it will never list, it's just that this is an interesting way of accessing capital and potentially expertise. So I'm kind of intrigued watching private equity start to play a role here, because private equity's generally been focused on the healthcare services end, so pathology, hospitals, so the provider end. So it's kind of interesting. I just like watching deals happen. So I don't really care what deal it is, they're all interesting to me.
Yeah, been a recurring theme that we've been talking about a lot recently. The whole investment in the space in Australia and whether there's enough or is it too little or is it just right? Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I think if you ask any founder, they'll say there's not enough because the reality of growth investing is that some companies will always miss out. Not every company is the best use of funds for an investor at any point in time. We've got more VC money in Australia than has ever existed in my career, and my career is longer than I like to admit. Not as long as some, longer than others. I think I would like to see an increase in specialised capital in the digital health space, similar to what we see in the US. I think we're seeing a number of the healthcare funds in the space. We also see some of the tech funds in the space. They all have their kind of preferred type of digital health. We haven't seen a holistic digital health fund come to the fore. I know there's some people out raising, and I'm wishing them luck. I'd like to see more than one fund in the space, to be fair. I'd like to see a number of funds in the space actively working together, because I think when you get to the significant rounds in Australia, you really need to start to see syndication. So if you're going to see a $20, $30 million investment, notwithstanding some of the big tech funds have done stuff at that level, it is often easy to pull those together with a syndicated approach. And so not only would I like to see new funds, I'd actually like to see more collaboration between existing funds. So when I set up ANDHealth, I actually always said the one thing that I would love to see is like a big tech fund, like a Blackbird or an Airtree or a Square Peg, doing a partnered capital raise, cornerstoning a deal in partnership with one of the big healthcare funds like Brandon Bioscience Managers, One Ventures, where you get the kind of really deep health sector expertise from those guys and the really cool tech expertise from the tech funds, and bring them together in a syndication. That was actually one of my objectives when I set up ANDHealth, was to see a greater syndication of funds between the more generalist tech funds and the healthcare funds. That hasn't happened, so and whether or not it will, but I think more funds in the digital health space is my area. So increasing the pool of and the capability around capital is certainly a strategic objective of ours, but also would love to see and have dialogue, and we do have great relationships with most of those funds I mentioned, but have increasing dialogue about, you know, can we accept that all of those different groups have different capability, and can we pull together the right buy-side team to really nurture some of these companies by accepting that there's a diversity of skills.
Kind of like a full-way deal on Shark Tank or something like that, hey?
Yeah, like syndication. So, you know, and we like a number of the funds syndicate, and a lot of the funds syndicate with funds offshore as the rounds get bigger. So a lot of syndication in both kind of camps with US funds. We actually don't see a lot of VC partnering around deals in Australia compared to what we see in the US. So I'd like to see more of that.
That's one. What else is happening in the community, Aidan?
As we already discussed, one of ANDHealth's first companies going through, Atmo Biosciences, raised $9.6 million. It was started by a ResMed engineer who now spun off his own company, as Bronwyn was saying earlier, was with a pill that could alert or might be take photos of your stomach and intestines as it flows through over time, and with the idea of then it being able to be used in certain gastrointestinal diseases and disorders. So that's pretty cool.
So it's the first, I can give you a bit of background. It's the first capsule that can do a end-to-end sensing of the gastrointestinal tract, and actually senses gas composition in the gut. In a very cool story, because I was just before this on an interview around industry-university collaboration, the original tech came out of RMIT. So really cool story, I think, for university-industry collaboration. So licensed by Planet Innovation, spun out, led by Mal Hebel-White, who is a former ResMed engineer, but also a really groundbreaking technology for especially as we look at the importance of the microbiome on things like mental health, but also on just general health. And so really cool tech, and yeah, really good to see them close an oversubscribed round. So sorry to jump in there, Aidan. I just thought I'd
No.
This is the thing about these cohort. This is the thing about these cohort companies. We can recite their pitch deck for them by the time we actually finish. But a really cool technology, I think, because university industry was my morning, I think it's actually cool to highlight when some of these tech, especially in digital health, when the tech actually does come from one of our university partners.
Yeah. The tech around that, looking at gas compositions in the gut, is really important in so many gastrointestinal disorders. So, as you said as well, like the microbiome is such a huge role in so many other body organs. So that's kind of like a really nice intro into Silo raising 1.1 million to look into psilocybin in mental health, which we've been seeing a lot in the last maybe 4 to 5 months. A lot of companies raising to look into using magical, like psilocybin and other
Did you say magical?
hallucinogens.
You said magical.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. I'm calling it out, but that's okay. Yeah.
He was going to say magic mushrooms, and then he caught himself.
Yeah. Using the key ingredients in magic mushrooms for mental health. So that's it's been happening over in the States for quite a while now. It's nice to see that Australia is following through as well. Yeah, and then we had the big news at the end of last week of Philips and Teladoc Health joining forces to offer virtual care solutions in Australia and New Zealand. This is probably another one we can throw to you, Bronwyn, since you're in the digital health center.
A bit of a spoiler alert as well. We've got an interview on the podcast which has been recorded, which will be released in about 2 weeks, actually on Tuesday for our premium podcast subscribers, but then 2 weeks on the public. So in a couple of weeks, we'll have an interview with both someone from Philips ANZ and managing director from Teladoc in APAC. So yeah, it's the virtual care space. It's one that's obviously big focus.
It's good to see, Aidan. So the next piece of news I'd love to see in Australia on virtual care is some kind of framework for consultation around reimbursement.
Yes, because that's coming up soon, isn't it, for all the GPs at the end of December, is it, or end of November?
Yeah, so that's telehealth, but what about reimbursement of remote patient monitoring technology? So when you look at the Philips product stack, they have a huge amount of remote patient monitoring technology that they work with. So does ResMed, and so do a number of other companies. But there's a couple of different reimbursement structures emerging across the world. One in Germany, which is kind of reimbursement of digital therapeutics, so reimbursement of the app itself, and then the US reimbursement of clinician time to review data from remote patient management technologies like connected devices. At the moment, we're still grappling with reimbursement of telehealth, but how do we incentivize virtual care through a more agile, disruptive, modern view on reimbursing technology? So there you go. That's my throw in for a theme next year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the that's the way virtual care transforms healthcare is reimagining how the consult is performed and using data as opposed to being consult led, which is the way that it's funded. So being able to be innovative in that sense requires some rework in terms of
you cannot divorce health from economics. So if there's no commercial incentive for technology to be rolled out, it's extremely hard to scale them. So the reality is, until there's some kind of system that incentivizes people to use technologies which monitor people in their real world without necessarily going to a clinic, then there'll be limited uptake. So it would be good to see some approach to and we certainly have a lot of really open conversations and really positive conversations with governments around this. But, I think that's the next big game changer. If we look at how much of the remote patient monitoring segment grew in the US as a result of the CPT codes, it's genuinely material when you start to put those reimbursement structures in place.
And sorry, Bronwyn, I covered your face, but that wasn't intentional. But Richard's put in the chat about workforce, which is also really important. Richard's a member of the community. Obviously, training and enabling clinicians in that process is also really critical too. So that's great. Anything else, Aidan? Before we look, obviously everyone in the community's got access to all those bits and can check those out. We've got covering different parts of the world now in the community, which is pretty cool. You're keeping us busy in terms of curating that content there.
Yeah, the only other big news coming out is from the United Kingdom with Octopus Ventures coming out saying that fertility startups are going to be $1 billion venture in the next year. So that's a very exciting space to be in, with so many, Aussie companies in the space. Like, I believe Harrison AI has a branch looking into fertility. And then we have other THT members that I can't remember off the top of my head.
Michelle,
like
President,
yeah.
Life Whisperer. Yep. No, it's a really important space too, and anyone that's been through that process knows that all too well. So the way that technology and AI can assist with that is great. So that's some good reading there out of the UK. Amazing. Well, look, we'll turn this off here, and then we'll kind of just start to wrap it up. But I can see here as well that Gavin earlier on kind of summed things up nicely. So do reach out to the team at ANDHealth. As we start to close out, Bronwyn, how do people check out the ANDHealth Plus program? How do they get in touch? All the kind of things to start to wind up the session?
Go to the ANDHealth website, hover on programs, click on Plus, ANDHealth Plus. Just noting that, when your chairman's on a podcast, you do have to behave yourself. So hopefully I'm not in trouble when I get off here. So thanks to Gavin for his work in chairing ANDHealth. He's a massive supporter and we love working with him. Just check out the program, but also just stay tuned. I guess we're always doing new stuff. We're always happy to collaborate. We do heaps of policy work in the back end, kind of not public, but we're always monitoring all the policy submissions and stuff like that. So if there's something that you feel strongly about that you want us to take a lead on, by all means, drop us a note. But also, keep an eye out for the programs. Even if you're not innovating at the moment, there's some really interesting gems. And certainly we've had some of our bigger companies send people to masterclass in their management teams to try and give them aspects, but also just encouraging people to continue to engage with groups like Talking HealthTech and following the news. And Aidan, you've given me some new news updates because I haven't had much time to read the news this week. But all of these networks are really, really important to building a sector. So, and Pete, I'd just personally like to thank you for your support and for the fun chats that we always have in a public forum. Always have to make sure I'm being a bit careful.
Look, I figure who else to bring on as a debut guest in these live streams than someone that can speak openly but appropriately and off the cuff. So there's been no preparation prior to this. So thank you, Bronwyn. I appreciate your flexibility in coming on and really taking us.
I'd also like to thank Aidan for wearing a suit and tie, because I don't think I've seen a suit and tie since 2019.
It's my only suit and tie, Bronwyn. So.
You need to wear it around the house for the rest of the day. Now, look, if you've watched back the recording, make sure you drop us a message and let us know. I can see comments still coming through, some great feedback and some great points as well, Robert, you made around remote patient monitoring as well. So thank you, everyone, for your input in the conversation today. Bronwyn, until next time, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Yeah.